What if everything you knew about the luxurious lives of society ladies of the past turned out to be nothing more than gilded paint on the walls of their prison? In the age of glamour and the late Victorian era, vast wealth did not guarantee happiness. On the contrary, it erected invisible but insurmountable walls around women. We are used to seeing proud beauties in satin dresses in old photographs, but we rarely think about what happened behind the closed doors of their stately mansions. These houses, built of marble and granite, became veritable fortresses where the will of fathers, brothers, and husbands was absolute law. Women with millions in their bank accounts often did not even have the right to go for a walk unaccompanied, or to write a letter that would not be read by their guardians. It was an era of great opportunities for men and great silence for those born in silk. Watch the video to the end to find out the true price of these golden cages and how wealth became a curse that deprived women of the simplest human joy: love. To begin with, I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of this era. Wealth was not an instrument of freedom, but a means of total control. The mansions on Fifth Avenue and the country estates of England were designed so that the life of the heiress was visible to the servants, but hidden from the outside world. High ceilings and endless enfilades of rooms created a sense of grandeur that in fact suppressed the personality of each inhabitant. Girls from high society spent their best years waiting for a profitable marriage, which was planned by their parents as a business deal. They were taught manners, languages, and music, but were forbidden to have their own opinions or ambitions outside the drawing room. Their every move was regulated by etiquette, which served as the perfect tool for suppressing their will. The luxurious rooms often remained cold, not only because of drafts, but also because of the lack of warmth. The father of the family viewed his daughter as a valuable asset that needed to be profitably invested in alliances with titled, but often ruined, aristocrats. The sparkle of diamonds at balls hid the tears shed in the silence of private chambers, where even the closest friends were not allowed. Social isolation was the norm. Heiresses were forbidden to communicate with people outside their circle, which narrowed their world to the size of a dining table. In these houses, the silence was deafening, and the rules were unshakable, like the granite foundations of the buildings themselves. Any attempt to show independence was suppressed with threats of disinheritance or disgrace, which in those days was worse than physical imprisonment. The heiress's free time was filled with meaningless visits and endless changes of clothes to create the illusion of busyness. Her every step was monitored by chaperones, whose duty was not friendship, but strict supervision of their charge's reputation. Letters that the girl received or sent were often opened by the head of the family to rule out any possibility of illicit affection. Even in their own bedrooms, they did not feel safe, knowing that any secret they had could be used against them. Wealth turned their lives into an endless spectacle, where the script was written by men, and the roles of women were strictly secondary. The real drama played out in the hearts of those who understood that their value was measured solely by their dowry. We are very interested to hear your point of view. What do you think about such a life in exchange for millions? Write about it in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss new stories about the secrets of the past. Are you ready to learn the truth about how feelings were destroyed for the sake of social status? In the age of splendor, love was considered a dangerous whim that could destroy multi-million-dollar fortunes and the reputation of entire clans. If an heiress's heart began to beat faster at the sight of an unsuitable person, she was immediately isolated from society. This often took the form of long trips to remote estates or even forced confinement within the walls of her family home. The family did everything possible to prevent a misalliance that could cast a shadow on the family name. For women of that time, reputation was the only currency, and its loss meant complete social oblivion. Behind the closed doors of mansions, tragedies worthy of Shakespearean plays unfolded, but without any hope of a happy ending. Parents used psychological pressure, manipulating feelings of duty and gratitude for a luxurious life. If a girl showed stubbornness, she could be deprived of communication with the only people she was attached to. Sometimes it got to the point where the heiress's rooms were locked, and food was brought in by servants who were forbidden to talk to their mistress. In such conditions, the will was quickly suppressed, and yesterday's rebels turned into submissive brides walking down the aisle with people they did not love. Marriage became just a new form of imprisonment, where the role of the father guardian was taken over by the husband master. This control even extended to thoughts, as reading wrong books or being fascinated by progressive ideas was considered a sign of madness. Women who fought too actively for their right to love were often declared mentally ill to justify their isolation. The psychiatry of the time willingly helped wealthy families hide inconvenient daughters in private clinics, which were little different from prisons. There, far from the glamour of balls, their lives faded into complete oblivion and loneliness. The family's wealth became a tool for buying the silence of doctors and neighbors, creating a vacuum around the victim. The most beautiful and wealthy women in the world found themselves most vulnerable in the face of patriarchal power. Do you think this price was justified by the preservation of the family fortune? In the next chapter, you will learn how heiresses became living commodities on the international bride markets. I will reveal the most closely guarded secret of how American millions saved the crumbling castles of Europe at the expense of women's destinies. At the end of the 19th century, a phenomenon emerged that contemporaries called title hunting, when wealthy American nouveau riche literally sold their daughters to British dukes. These girls, known as dollar princesses, crossed the ocean with huge dowries to buy themselves a place in the highest aristocracy. However, behind the title of Duchess often lay a life in a cold, dilapidated castle, where the husband despised his commercial wife. These marriages were purely for money, and American heiresses found themselves in a foreign country without friends or support. Their wealth went to repairing their husbands' estates and paying off their debts, while the women themselves remained isolated. The British aristocracy accepted their money but rarely accepted them, considering American women to be vulgar upstarts. In the vast estates of England, these women felt even more lonely than in their New York mansions. Their husbands, having gained access to capital, often returned to their mistresses and their usual lifestyle, leaving their wives locked up in rural silence. Huge gardens and parks became the territory of their daily solitary walks, where nature was their only companion. They had no right to dispose of their own money, as according to the laws of the time, the wife's property came under the complete control of her husband. It was a sophisticated form of slavery, concealed by ermine mantles and family tiaras. Many of these women were unable to adapt to the strict norms of Victorian etiquette, which were even stricter than those in America. Every letter they wrote home was censored so that their parents would not learn about the real state of affairs and stop funding them. They were obliged to bear heirs, fulfilling their final function in this business transaction, after which they were often simply forgotten. The stories of Consuelo Vanderbilt and other famous brides of the time show that even a fairy tale wedding could be the beginning of a long nightmare. Their lives turned into an endless wait for something that would never come, genuine warmth or a return home. These women paid millions for the right to be called ladies, but they also paid with years of their unlived youth. If you are interested in this topic, please like the video so we know to do more historical investigations. What if I showed you a time machine that would take us behind the scenes of grand houses where the walls had ears and eyes? The life of an heiress in a mansion of the Gilded Age was devoid of the slightest privacy due to the huge staff of servants, who often served as spies for the head of the family. Maids, footmen, and housekeepers knew their mistress's every secret and were obliged to report any suspicious behavior. Any untimely word or found note could cause a huge scandal and immediate tightening of the regime. Servants were not seen as helpers, but as a constant reminder that the woman was under constant surveillance. This created an atmosphere of paranoia, where even in her own bedroom she could not relax and be herself. The architecture of these houses also worked against personal freedom. The rooms were arranged so that access to them was as controlled as possible. Narrow corridors for servants allowed staff to appear suddenly, as if out of nowhere, interrupting any confidential conversations. Windows often opened onto inner courtyards or were protected by heavy grills, which were presented as decorative elements. Gardens surrounded by high stone fences ruled out any possibility of accidental contact with passers-by or neighbors. Even a trip in a carriage became a supervised procedure, with the coachman and footman recording the lady's departure and arrival times. Freedom of movement ended at the threshold of the house, and beyond it, was only an illusion. The psychological pressure of such an existence led many women to fall into deep apathy or melancholy. They could spend days on end in their chambers, doing needlework or looking out the window at a world that was closed to them. The constant feeling of being watched deprived them of initiative and the desire to change their fate. Parents and husbands encouraged such passive behavior, considering it a sign of good upbringing and true femininity. Those who tried to bribe servants or find allies among the staff risked even more, as betrayal was commonplace. Life in such a house was like walking on a tightrope, where any wrong move could lead to a fall into the abyss of shame. In the next chapter, you will learn how the heiresses coped with this eternal coldness within their luxurious walls. Inside the magnificent halls decorated with gold and carvings, the heiresses learned the art of hiding their true feelings. A woman was expected to always look impeccable, regardless of what was going on in her soul. Every morning began with a lengthy dressing ritual, which was a form of discipline in itself. Corsets, tightened to the limit, not only shaped the figure, but also literally deprived them of the ability to breathe deeply. It was the physical embodiment of the social constraints in which they lived every day. External glamour was a duty, the failure to fulfill which was followed by immediate condemnation from the family. Their days were filled with rituals that served no practical purpose, but maintained the family's status. Tea parties, receptions, and charity bazaars required constant attendance and fake smiles. Heiresses became living decorations in their mansions, showcasing the wealth and taste of their fathers or husbands. They were not allowed to pursue professional careers or even study science in depth, as this was considered improper. Their education was superficial, aimed only at enabling women to hold light conversation in the salon. Intellectual hunger was as real as the emotional vacuum in which they found themselves. Many women found solace in collecting art or rare books, creating their own little worlds within large houses. However, even these hobbies had to be approved by male guardians who kept track of expenses. Often, valuable collections were sold by the husband if he needed funds to cover card debts or maintain racehorses. Property rights for women were a legal fiction that existed only on paper until marriage. After the wedding, all her assets were transferred to her husband, who could dispose of them at his discretion. This made heiresses completely dependent on the will and character of a man they often hardly knew. What happens behind closed doors is often shocking, even a century after the events. In families of the Belle Epoque, there was an unspoken conspiracy of silence about domestic unhappiness and cruelty. If the husband was a gambler or a tyrant, the wife was obliged to hide it, maintaining the facade of a perfect marriage for the sake of the family's prestige. Complaining to parents was useless, as they themselves were often the initiators of the union and did not want to admit their mistake. A public scandal or divorce would mean exclusion from high society and the loss of all privileges. Therefore, women endured humiliation in the silence of their bedrooms, knowing that the world would never know about their pain. Heiresses were often restricted in their spending, even if they had a huge personal fortune, and were given only small amounts for their daily expenses. Husbands controlled bank accounts, using their wives' money for their own personal needs and ambitious projects. A woman could live in a house worth millions, but not be able to buy herself an extra pair of gloves without permission. This financial slavery was the most effective way to maintain power over the golden captives. Any disobedience led to a complete cessation of payments, which made the woman completely helpless. In such conditions, even the proudest heiress eventually broke down and accepted the rules of the game. Sometimes the control reached absurd levels, with women forbidden to leave their rooms without a special invitation to dinner. They could spend weeks within four walls, seeing only their maid and music teacher. Such isolation was used as punishment for showing character or attempting to argue with the head of the household. Neighbors saw only lit windows and heard the sounds of an orchestra during rare balls, unaware of the drama hidden behind the facade. Society accepted these rules, believing that the head of the family had every right to establish order in his domain. A woman's fate was merely a bargaining chip in the great game of power and influence. Do you think attitudes toward women in high society have changed today? Or have the forms of control simply become different? The huge mansions, built in the style of French chateaux or Italian palazzos, were not designed for cozy family life. Each room was designed to impress guests, not for the comfort of its inhabitants. Heiresses often had breakfast in huge dining rooms all alone, surrounded by an army of silent servants. The sound of their footsteps echoed in the empty corridors, emphasizing the extent of their isolation. In such houses, it was difficult to find a corner where one could feel safe from prying eyes. Luxury weighed heavily on the psyche, reminding women that they were just another expensive item in the collection. The bedrooms of heiresses were often located in the farthest part of the house, away from the front entrances and the noise of the street. This created an additional barrier between them and reality, turning their lives into a waking dream. Every detail of the interior, from heavy velvet curtains to inlaid furniture, served as a symbol of status but provided no warmth. Many women suffered from chronic depression, which at the time was called nervous exhaustion or hysteria. Treatment usually consisted of even greater isolation and bed rest, which only exacerbated the situation. They were locked not only in their homes, but also in their own bodies, constrained by corsets and society's expectations. Even religion in these families served as a tool of control, instilling in women ideas about the need for humility and submission. Priests often colluded with heads of families, convincing heiresses that their suffering was a cross to be borne with dignity. Any thoughts of escape or change were suppressed as sinful and unworthy of a pious lady. The only legal opportunity to change their surroundings was to travel to resorts, but even there they were under strict supervision. The whole world was a huge waiting room for them, where time dragged on endlessly. Wealth deprived them of the incentive to fight for life, turning it into a slow withering away, surrounded by silk and porcelain. Among these locked-up women were many gifted individuals whose talents were sacrificed to propriety. Heiresses might have had brilliant mathematical minds or literary gifts, but they were only allowed to write elegant letters. Any attempt at serious creativity or scientific research was perceived as a ridiculous whim, unworthy of a woman of their circle. Many of them kept secret diaries in which they poured out their pain and unfulfilled ambitions. These records were often destroyed by relatives after the owner's death so as not to spoil the ideal image of the family. Thus, the world forever lost the thoughts and feelings of those who could have become great if not for the gold of their family names. Women who tried to go into business or manage their estates faced fierce resistance from their brothers or husbands. It was believed that numbers and contracts were a man's business, and a woman's job was to grace society events with her presence. Even if an heiress saw her property being squandered, she often had no legal leverage to intervene. This powerlessness caused a deep sense of resentment and injustice that built up over the years. Many found an outlet in endless charity committees, which were the only form of social activity permitted for ladies. But even there, their initiative was often limited to attending meetings. These women's youth was spent in endless preparations for a life that never began. They waited for marriage, then for the birth of children, then for their children to marry, while remaining passive observers. Their dreams of travel, adventure, or simply the right to decide how to spend their day were shattered against the granite walls of their mansions. In an era of great discoveries and technological revolutions, they remained in medieval captivity to their social roles. Each of them was a potential player in the arena of life, but they were only allowed to sit in the audience. It was a quiet tragedy of an entire generation of talented women whose names remained only in the dowry registers. For those heirs who refused to obey the will of their families, there was a most terrible fate: being declared insane. In the 19th century, any woman who showed excessive independence or unwillingness to marry was diagnosed with hysteria. Influential fathers could easily arrange with doctors to have their daughters placed in a closed boarding school or private clinic. There, far from society, women were deprived of all rights and contact with the outside world. It was the ideal way to get rid of an inconvenient heiress without unnecessary noise and scandal. Many of them spent decades in such institutions, gradually losing touch with reality. The conditions in such clinics for the rich were outwardly comfortable, but in essence they remained prisons. Patients were monitored around the clock, forbidden to write uncensored letters or receive visitors without the permission of their guardian. The medications they were given often caused apathy and drowsiness, suppressing their will to resist. Society preferred to believe that these women were truly ill so as not to ask unnecessary questions of their influential relatives. The family's wealth ensured that the secret of this confinement would never leave the confines of the clinic. It was the ultimate act of betrayal by those who were supposed to protect and love them. Many stories of such women remained untold, turning into urban legends about mad relatives locked in attics. In reality, these were real people whose only crime was wanting to live by their own rules. Their lives ended in obscurity, and their property passed to the very people who had isolated them. It was a cruel and cynical system where money was worth more than human life and freedom. The mansions continued to shine with lights, while their true mistresses faded away in the shadows of hospital wards. The memory of them was erased from family archives as if they had never existed. With the advent of the 20th century and the outbreak of World War I, the world of golden cages began to gradually collapse. Economic crises and social changes forced many families to sell their magnificent mansions, which had become too expensive to maintain. The heirs of the new generation began to demand the right to vote, education, and the opportunity to work. However, for those who had lived their lives in the Gilded Age, these changes often came too late. They remained prisoners of their upbringing and habits, unable to live in a world without supervision and strict rules. Their story is a reminder that the true price of wealth is often measured in lost freedom. Many of these magnificent houses have now been turned into museums or hotels, and tourists marvel at their architecture and luxury. But if you look closely at the old portraits and gilded frames, you can see the sadness in the eyes of those who once lived here. Behind every rich facade lay a human cost, expressed in years of loneliness and unfulfilled hopes. We must remember that progress in human rights were won in part through the suffering of these invisible victims. Their quiet dramas in the hearts of the golden cages became the foundation for the future freedoms that we take for granted today. True luxury is not marble and silk, but the ability to choose your own path. Today, these stories serve as a lesson to us about the importance of valuing human dignity above capital. The heirs of the Gilded Age were hostages of their time, locked in the trappings of their own grandeur. Their lives were an endless ball to which they were brought against their will and from which they could not escape. We open these pages of history to pay tribute to their patience and strength of spirit. Behind every glittering ornament was pain, and behind every closed door was a broken destiny. The era has passed, but the echo of those quiet footsteps in empty halls still resonates for those who are willing to listen. Which of the stories of the heirs of the Gilded Age touched you the most and why? Was it the story of the dollar princesses who traded millions for cold titles? Or the fate of those who spent their lives behind the closed doors of their own mansions under the supervision of strict servants? We often romanticize the past, but behind every beautiful dress and ball lay the harsh reality of patriarchal control. Share your thoughts on golden cages in the comments and write about what other historical periods you would like to explore with us. Suggest topics for future videos that you consider most important and interesting to discuss. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you don't miss out on new exciting investigations into the mysteries and destinies of past centuries.